Hello out there in our YouTube land and Facebook Live. This is King Ant, the Papa of the Paul Pack. As y'all can see, I'm here by myself today. I don't have the gang with me, but you could go to our YouTube channel and subscribe to the Paul Pack, or go to our Facebook page. Go and like it and watch some of our videos we got. We've been putting out a lot of videos from the past year or two. So you could go on there. It's family dynamic, but it's coming from this word. It's coming from the Bible. So if you could go there and like some of my videos, share them, just listen to them. We got some good content in there. But today, the Papa Paul is here alone, and I'm just going to be doing a little teaching on this word. I'm going to be coming from Genesis 12 and Genesis 15. That's our forefather Abraham. And I just want to show you in the word where you can have a blessing and a consequence at the same time. Because some of us, may think because we're blessed. And when I say blessed, I'm not speaking of the biblical definition of blessed, because we know God sees blessing as a whole different way than we see it in our world. But I'm speaking of the blessings that, we kind of stick to in this life, in this world, when you have money and you have, riches, and you well off. I'm speaking of those kind of blessings. I'm going to show you where you can have those kind of blessings and you can have a consequence at the same time from God. All right. And we're going to do it by the story of Abraham. All right. Abraham is our forefather. Y'all know that. You should know it if you're a believer. But a little context before I get to Genesis 12. Everybody knows the story of the Tower of Babel, all right, where the people, wanted to make a city, in Babel, which was Babylon. All right, so they was trying to build a great city up to the heavens. And, God said, all right, let's go down. God came down and he confused their language so they could disperse, all right, because God said they were on one accord. And they all had the same language, so they was gonna succeed in what they were trying to do and build that city up to heaven. But God never, commanded them to do that. God told them in Genesis 9, after Noah got off the boat, he wanted, humanity to be fruitful and multiply and go out into the world and fill the earth, But they chose to build the city at Babel in Genesis 11, and God was displeased with this, and this is why he came down and confused their language so they could scatter and do what he told them to do. It's a backstory to that. I won't get into that right now, but maybe I'll do a teaching on that later, where this here also ties into the Deuteronomy 32 worldview. I don't know if any of you know about that, but where God disinherited the nations, all right, to other lesser divine beings. He disinherited them and took Abraham for himself. So God was taking out a remnant, to bless the many. All right, but that's the backstory. I don't want to get into that right now. I have to do a teaching on that, later on. But this is where we come up to the calling of Abraham. All right, because God had disinherited all the other nations. He said, I'm just going to deal with Israel. I'm going to deal with Abraham and his people, a select group right now. And then once I get them on the right track, then I'll bless all the other nations. But everybody, it's hard when you're dealing with a whole bunch of folk. Sometimes you just got to get, 5 or 10 and say, I'm going to start with them and then I'll work my way out. So that's kind of what God was doing. So God calls Abraham to go to Canaan. He said, I will go to the land that I will show you. And Abraham obeyed him. Abraham left his father's house and he went to the land that God was showing, which was Canaan. All right. Abraham, he's human, so Abraham do some good and he do some bad like all the rest of us. He took Lot with him. He took his nephew with him. God didn't tell him to do that, but he did it. So, that was a kind of a mistake he made. But He goes, though. We got to give him credit. He believed God. He trusted God. I don't know about you, but it's hard for God to tell you to leave your family and go to another city or a state. You know, my wife did that, and that's a hard calling to obey God in that. So Abraham goes. But Abraham goes and he gets to Canaan. And when Abraham gets to Canaan, this is Genesis 12, y'all. I'm just going to, I'm just going to give you an overview of it. I don't want to really be, doing too much reading. I know people get bored with that. But so he calls Abraham. Abraham goes to Canaan, like God says. But when Abraham gets to Canaan, he gets there and it's a famine in the land. And Abraham decides on his own that he was going to go to Egypt. All right. Now, how many of you know if God tell you to go somewhere, all right, God told you to go somewhere, to go to Canaan, and it's a famine there, you don't think God knew it was a famine there? I mean, God ain't going to tell you to go nowhere. He's the all-knowing. He knows everything. So God knew that when Abraham got there, that it was going to be it was a famine in the land. All right. But we serve a God that is able to make a way in the wilderness. All right. To make rivers in the desert. I mean, if we can even look at 1 Kings 17, where God, he fed Elijah, the prophet. He fed him bread and meat for morning and evening. He fed him when he spoke a drought in the land for years. So Abraham really can't use that excuse, to say, well, I went, Lord, I went where you told me to go, but it was a famine in the land. Like, what do you want me to do? You want me to stay there and starve to death? No, I think what he was supposed to do was trust God. Just like he trusted God when he left his father's house, he was supposed to trust God when he was in the land of Canaan, and it was a famine there. All right. So he winds up going to Egypt. All right. This is the mini Exodus story before the big Exodus story that happened, in Egypt with Pharaoh and Moses. All right. This is the small version of it. All right. It happened before. I mean, the first time wasn't when Moses then went down there. So Abraham goes down to Egypt and he tells his wife, Sarah. He tells Sarah that, you know what, Sarah, tell them that you're not my wife, that you're my sister. Because Sarah was bad, y'all. Y'all hear what I'm saying? Sarah was a bad somebody. She was fine. So Abraham was like, look, you better tell them that you're my sister, because I know they're going to take you. These kings, whatever they see something they like, they just take it, and they could do that. So that gets down to Egypt, and sure enough, Pharaoh, he seen Sarah, his wife, and how, beautiful she was, and they took her. Abraham told him, oh, hey, this is my sister, and I'm not going to get into the half-sister thing. I'm just saying they were married at the time, you know what I'm saying? So it was his wife. So he lied to Pharaoh, and he told him, yeah, no, this is my sister. So Pharaoh takes her in, takes Sarah in, his wife in, and he takes her in, and he blesses Abraham, because he was thinking that that's your brother, that Sarah is his brother. So Pharaoh is hooking Abraham up, all right, blessing him with all kind of gifts and stuff. And but the funny thing happened when Pharaoh took Sarah in his house. God sent great plagues on Pharaoh and his household. So Pharaoh came back and confronted Abraham and said, hey, man, why you lied to me? Why you told me that she was not your wife? Why you told me she was your sister? And so Abraham confesses, I was scared because I knew that you guys would kill me and take her. So after the plagues were God, pronounced plagues on Abraham's, not Abraham, on Pharaoh's household, Pharaoh gave her back to Abraham. Said, no, take her and go. But not only did he give Abraham his wife back, but he gave him so much. He gave him a lot of gifts. He gave him livestock, gold, silver. So now don't get it twisted. Now Abraham had some stuff before he went there. But when he left, when he left Egypt, he had way more than what he came with. If we could look at, let me see, in verse where it said, all right, in verse 13, chapter 13, Genesis chapter 13, verse 1 says, so Abraham left Egypt and traveled north to Negev, along with his wife and Lot and all that they owned. Abraham was very rich in livestock, silver and gold. So he left with way more than what he came with when he first went to Egypt. So that's the definition that I want to use today of Abraham made a decision, his own decision. It wasn't God didn't tell him to go to Egypt. He made that up in his own mind. I'm going to go. And he went and he got blessed. All right. He had gold, silver, much livestock, servants, all that Pharaoh gave him, because Pharaoh was like, man, I don't want these players on my household. Go, take this and go. So that's the blessing, all right, Abraham got out of it. Now we turn to chapter 15, Genesis chapter 15. And we have Abraham, God, told him, how he was going to bless Abraham, bless all his descendants, and was going to bless all the nations because of Abraham's seed, his descendants. And so Abraham started telling God, well, God, I'm 75 years old and I don't even have a son, I don't have a son. So what good is it that you're blessing me and all this? And how are you going to do that? And I don't even have, an heir to my wealth and to my name. You know what I'm saying? So how are you going to do this? So God, basically tells Abraham, Abraham thought that Eleazar was going to be his inherited, was going to inherit all his wealth and everything, which was just a servant of Abraham. But God had to tell Abraham, no, Abraham, you're going to have a son. It's going to be your own son. You're going to have many descendants, but it's coming from your own son. You're going to have your own son. But Abraham, he kind of believed God, but he really didn't believe God. All right. Because, wouldn't you? Abraham is 75 years old and Sarah got to be about 72. All right. When the last time you checked was 70-something years old, had a baby. All right. But we're dealing with an almighty, sovereign God who can do anything and all things. So Abraham's, he's kind of confused and like, God, man, like, I don't know about this. Like, and he asks God to basically give him a promise, like, promise me that you're going to bless me and I'm going to have a son that's going to inherit my wealth and everything that my blessings coming down, give me a sign, show me, you know how we say, give me a promise, make me a promise, because he didn't know. And God did not want to tell him. A lot of times God don't give us, all the details. All right. When God tell us he's going to bless us or he's going to do something for us, he don't tell us all the in between. He just tells us what he's going to do. I'm going to do this for you. Because he knows if he tells us all the intricate details of that situation, that we're going to wind up messing it up. All right. And I'm going to show you how Abraham did that. God didn't tell him that I'm going to miraculously, allow you to have a baby with your wife, Sarah, at this old age, God kind of told him, but he didn't tell him how. Abraham just was like, man, I don't know how you're going to do this here. But God definitely, had a plan, all right, in mind. But he wasn't going to tell Abraham all his plan was about, all his details. So Abraham wanted a promise from God. So God gave him a promise. God told him, all right, go get some animals. Go get a heifer, he said, and some birds and stuff. And immediately Abraham knew what he was talking about. This is a blood past sacrifice that he knew that Abraham was familiar with that. So he went and got it. And he cut him up and he set him on a path and all that. And he did that and he set it all up. But I believe when Abraham knew that, wait a minute, I'm making a covenant. I'm making a blood covenant with God Almighty. Do y'all know that in a blood covenant, when you make a blood covenant and you go through that thing, you make a covenant with somebody, whoever messes up that covenant is put to death. You have to be, whoever breaks the covenant has to be put to death. So Abraham, I think he kind of was like, wait a minute, I don't know, I might have done got myself in something I can't, you know what I'm saying, I can't fulfill, you know. And the reason why I say that is because when he put the animals down and he made the path and he set them up where the blood will come out, all right, in this culture, it's a thing where you have to, the lesser person is supposed to walk through there first. And then the greater person will walk through that first. And that's the covenant bond that they will have, you know, between the two. But the reason why I said Abraham was kind of thinking about it is because Abraham didn't walk through. He set it up and everything, but he did not walk through. And the reason why you can know that is it talks about how the birds came down on the carcasses of the animals that he had cut up. So that meant some time had went by. So Abraham, we looking at Abraham like, why you set it up? Go and walk through. You the lesser person. God go after you. But then a good thing happened. God, you know, caused a deep sleep to come upon Abraham. And we all, that should be familiar to us when we hear a deep sleep, because we know that happened in Genesis in the beginning, where God caused a deep sleep to come upon Adam. And the most beautiful and best thing in this world came out of that deep sleep. That was when God took one man out of the side of man. Oh, bless him. God did something great right there now. So right now we should be thinking God about to do something great if he caused a deep sleep to come upon Abraham. And what happened, God goes through, you know, he put him in a deep sleep. Abraham has a vision of smoke, a pot of smoke and fire. Smoke went through the blood sacrifice first, and then fire went through. Fire went through second. All right, so basically that was God doing a covenant with himself. God knew that Abraham couldn't keep the covenant, that he would break the covenant. So God went through as the lesser person and the greater person. So God knew once Israel broke this covenant, which we knew they were, all right, God knew they were going to break it, that God would have to be the one that would die instead of Abraham. Oh, what a mighty God we serve. So he made a covenant with himself. When it was supposed to be Abraham was supposed to be the one that died, God said, no, I'll walk through both times, and I'll be the one that will die on your behalf, on behalf of Israel, you know, and the people of God. And that's what happened. We know Jesus came and he died on the cross. That's another example why Jesus had to come and die for Israel, because they broke the covenants. All right. So, but the one place I wanted to go to, I want to pick out to illustrate that y'all seen the blessing was in chapter 12, all right, 10 through 20, all right, Genesis. But in Genesis 15, it was an odd verse, you know, in here. And it starts in verse 13. I want to read that. It says, then the Lord said to Abram, you can be sure that your descendants will be strangers in a foreign land, where they will be oppressed as slaves for 400 years. But I will punish the nation that enslaves them, and in the end, they will come away with great wealth. All right, I'm reading from the NLT. So that's a strange place to put that, you know. God said you can be sure your descendants will be strangers in a foreign land. They will be oppressed for 400 years. And we know he's talking about the Exodus story, where they were in bondage in Egypt. But why would God put this story here? All right. The reason why God put this story here is because of the disobedience that Abraham did in chapter 12. When Abraham went to the land of Canaan, and he didn't stay there and wait for instructions from God. He decided to go, all right, on his own volition. He decided to go to Egypt, all right, on his own, without God's telling him to go. He went on his own. So God said, because you did that, now your descendants will be enslaved for 400 years. They're going to make this same mistake. If you know the Exodus story, you know about, it was a famine in the land where Jacob's sons were there. He already sent Joseph on ahead. But it was a famine in the land in Canaan, the same place. And they had to go to Egypt to get food and do all that. And we know that they went to Egypt. You know, they found out that Joseph was there, and you know, they wind up staying there, you know. And that's the same situation happened. And it just goes to show how it goes to show how, you know, it's easy for God to, well, basically Abraham brought Egypt into Israel when he did that. When he left Canaan and went to Egypt, he brought Egypt into Israel. And one thing about God, it's easy for God to take us people out of Egypt, but it's hard to take Egypt out of you. And that's what we would see. I mean, we're going to see going on. You know, you see even in the next chapter, in chapter 16, the birth of Ishmael, you know, all kind of mistakes came out of Abraham going down to Egypt. All right. When he left, he got the servant slave Hagar from Egypt. The one that him and Sarah decides to help God out and have a baby, have the promised child through Hagar, an Egyptian slave. All right. God didn't tell you to do that. They came up with that decision on their own again. All right. God told you it was going to be your own son that was going to receive this blessing, but you're going to decide to help God out. All right. And you use the Egyptian slave Hagar that you got from Egypt. That if you would have never went there, you would have never brought that problem on to Israel. All right. So we see that. And we also see later on in the Exodus story, all right, in Numbers 13, remember when they sent the spies in the land? All right. They sent the spies in the land, and I mean, they all came back and was saying, oh, the land of Canaan is great and all this and that, but it's giants there, you know. And Joshua and Caleb were the only one was saying, hey, let's take the land. God said it's ours. Let's go in and take it. But that older generation, they were like, nope. You turn to Numbers 14. They said nope. They started going after Moses and was talking about him and saying they wanted to go back to Egypt, and that they should have stayed in Egypt. They're not going to Canaan like they had it made in Egypt, just complaining and murmuring and complaining and saying they wanted to go back to Egypt after God had did 10 wonderful signs. I mean, he miraculously brought them through the Red Sea, and they still said they wanted to go back to Egypt and be oppressed and be slaves. Like that were better. And God was so mad with them. And God just told them, you know what? Y'all gonna die off in this wilderness. Y'all gonna wander around here for 40 years. Only the young group of people gonna go into the land of Canaan. Says y'all got that Egypt mentality inside of you. See how that consequence, when you get Egypt in you, it's hard for God to get that thing out of you. He could easily he went in and took Abraham and Sarah out of Egypt real quick. Just did it through a quick little plague on Pharaoh, and Pharaoh let him go. Now it was harder the next time with when all of them were there in the Exodus story. You know, he had to do 10 plagues, but we know with the hardening of the hearts and all that, God just wanted to show his power, you know. But it wasn't no problem for God to get them out of Egypt then. You know, he got them out of there then. He brought them through the Red Sea with no problem. But the problem came when he had to try and get Egypt out of them. That was the problem. So that's the problem when we try and make, you know, decisions on our own without, you know, without listening to God, without obeying God, you know, and waiting for his instructions, especially when we make major decisions. I mean, we should be praying and seeking the Lord and asking the Lord, what will you have me to do? Where will you have me to go? We shouldn't just be making our own decision. We can make our own decision, and we can actually receive things, blessings out of that, like Abraham did. But then you could bring consequences on your future descendants, on your children's and your children's children. You can't do that, like we seen in the story today with in Genesis 12 and Genesis 15. And like I said before, there's no excuse. You know, I know, you know, some people might say, well, there was a famine in the land, you know. Abraham went, he obeyed, but when he went, it was a famine in the land. Like, what is a man supposed to do? He was supposed to wait on God. All right, like I said before. All right, we serve a God, like Isaiah 41 and 43 said, we serve a God that can make a way in the wilderness and make rivers in the desert. So it's no excuse for you to say that he should have left. All right, so that's the little lesson for today. I don't want to go too long. I already done went too long, but just because you make your own choices and decisions and you receive a blessing, be careful that you didn't obey God and also receive the consequence to go along with that blessing. And that's the lesson of the day. Blessings and consequences. Don't be fooled by some blessings just because you receive a lot of material things. All right, you could have disobeyed God and have consequences coming after for your kids after that. So I'm gonna end this teaching right now. You know, I'll be coming on doing some more teachings, you know, on behalf of the Paul Pack. But you know, y'all could comment on something that y'all might want me to do. You know, I just feel like the black community need more, you know, sound teaching. And you know, I'm not a sermon type preacher, you know, or preacher who does the, you know, hooping and hollering. You know, no knock against that. I mean, if that's what you do, that's what you do. But that's just, I'm just not that type. I'm one to do sound teaching and like I like to say, I'm paper Bible saved. All right, I know we got technology and all that, but I'm paper Bible saved. I like digging in this word and seeking it out, and I like, you know, reading the Bible through context. All right, I'm not one to do a lot of proof texting. All right, because I feel like that could get you in a lot of danger. But I'm the one who, I like context, you know, the context of the book that I'm reading at the time, or the context of that chapter. And I also love, you know, the fact that another fact that we don't factor in, you know, in the black community is the cultural context of the Bible. I mean, this Bible was written 2,000 years ago, 2,000, 3,000 years ago. You know what I'm saying? So for us to believe that the Bible says what we think it is in our modern day 21st century mind is ludicrous. You know, I mean, you have to get a cultural context to know what they're saying mean the same thing. We all know that, you know, languages, you know what I'm saying, go along with our culture. All right, so just because you read something in here and in your modern day mind, like, oh, it means that. It might not be necessarily what that means. You have to dig and study, you know, and find out what did they believe in their culture. And that's a lot of mistakes we make, you know, in our community. I'm going to talk about our community because I'm black. That's who I, you know, basically see, you know, and deal with. So that's why I will be coming on doing, you know, more sound teaching. Hopefully it will bless someone. I don't know everything, but, you know, I do try to study and dig a lot, you know, to get proper understanding of the context and the cultural context. And, you know, I just think it would, you know, if it could possibly help one person out there today, you know, it don't have to help a lot, but at least one person, then I think God will be pleased with me, you know. So, that's all for today, and I'll be doing. I know I probably do another one. I don't know when. I have one I want to do on the temple and the presence of the Lord. You know, I wanna kind of dive in that one. So I will do that, and so y'all stay tuned for that. And I'm King Ant, the Papa of the Paul Pack, and remember, less talking, more listening. All right, see y'all. Peace.